Welcome to Cosmic Disclosure. I'm your host, David Wilcock, and I'm here with Corey Goode, an insider who has come forward claiming to be from the secret space program, having access to extraordinarily classified information, much of which is completely new to even the most seasoned veterans who've studied UFOs, insider testimony, classified intel, all this kind of stuff. In this episode, we're going to delve into one of the subjects that you have consistently told us in your comments and by what you've watched on the internet of my videos is the most fascinating subject for you. I'm talking about the glandula pinealis, or the pineal gland. So Corey, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Could you, in your own words, explain for our audience what you heard about the pineal gland? What is it? Does it have a function for us? What is the pineal gland?
When I was in the MyLab program and I was identified as an intuitive empath, they were giving us injections and sonic treatments right here.
Injections where?
In our shoulders.
Okay.
And our hips. When we were younger, they'd give us injections in our hips. When we got older, they would give them in our shoulders.
That sounds painful.
Yeah, you got used to it. And then there was just a metal kind of rod that came to a point that they would put right here that would send sonic waves to the pineal gland. And they said it was to enhance our, not the empath, but the intuitive part of our intuitive empath abilities.
Could you feel a sonic vibration in your skull from it?
Yeah. You felt the sonic waves going in about a good 6 inches back into your head.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was obviously important to them to stimulate the pineal gland.
Well, in the scholarship that I've put out in Sourcefield, there's a whole chapter on the pineal gland. We know it's in the geometric center of the brain. We know it's the size of a pea. It has more blood flow going through it than any other part of the body except the kidneys. And mainstream science says, oh, we don't really know what this thing is. But there are cells inside the pineal gland that actually are the same cells, more or less, as in the retina of the eye.
Rods and cones?
They're called pinealocytes, but they're the same thing. And they're also wired into the visual cortex of the brain by the same type of wiring that we have from our eyes. So the ancient traditions literally call it a third eye. And in my videos, and we have this coming up in future episodes of Wisdom Teachings, there's pine cones and that kind of iconography showing up in all different world religions. So do you think that there is something happening inside the pineal gland that these little rods and cones are seeing?
Well, they said it was to help stimulate the second sight and the intuitive abilities. And they stated that they knew that there are ancient Earth breakaway groups that they've gotten their hands on who have very large pineal glands.
Oh, really?
And they said that at one time, all of us, our pineal glands used to be quite a bit larger than they are now. And they were trying to stimulate growth and activity in our pineal glands.
Well, that's very interesting because the insider Jacob told me that the Draco tried to engineer modern humans so that we would not have a pineal gland at all. And they got very mad because benevolent ETs came in and reinstalled it. And have you ever heard anything like that? Okay.
I actually heard that it was a part of the grand experiment from these 22 different genetic experiments from these 40 groups. That this experiment was not only genetic in nature, but it was also spiritual in nature, and that they were trying to enhance us in a spiritual way, and that the pineal gland and something also to do with our light body was something that they were manipulating to try to help us become more spiritual and more developed in that way. Now, they are obviously at odds with this Draco Alliance group.
So that would imply that the Super Federation is not all negative, that they are...
Yeah, it's like I said, it's all point of view. They have their agendas and why they're manipulating us the way they're doing.
We've had multiple insiders suggest that when you see the halo around someone in these ancient pictures, or in Buddhist illustrations, it's more like a corona, that would indicate a pineal gland that's much more active and that there's some sort of light phenomena. Did you ever see anything like that?
Well, when I was talking just now about our light bodies, the exercises they put us through were to not only activate our pineals, but to expand our light bodies to where they would say that when they got us to the point where they wanted us, we would be sitting in a room and our light bodies would expand past the walls of the room that we were in.
Wow.
So there is obviously a direct connection with the pineal gland and the development and expansion of your light body.
Well, I want to get back to those exercises in a minute, but first I want to bring in another interesting point. I've had at least 4 different insiders tell me that if our pineal gland is even partly activated, never mind fully activated, that we could literally fly throughout the cosmos. Do you feel that it is somehow a stargate, like a portable biological stargate built into our body, just like hardware that we haven't accessed yet?
Yeah, a lot of beings use the pineal gland and their light body to project their consciousness and themselves to other physical locations, and then send that information back through that connection to their physical bodies, and then change the vibration of their physical bodies to match the vibration of the location they're at, and then the body teleports to that location and rejoins the consciousness, or what some people are saying are having out-of-body experiences or projecting their minds.
Right.
There are a lot of different terminology for what these more advanced beings are doing.
I'm just curious, do you think that, because this is a speculation I've had, that the halo is actually the mouth of a wormhole and that you get gravitationally pulled up into the mouth when your pineal gland is open, you can fly up into that halo and travel through it?
I think that these depictions of halos and auras that they've shown around people are just people that have really highly developed their light bodies and their pineal glands and developed themselves in a very intuitive, spiritual way. And that's the way that they've been depicted in art. And people that have also developed their light bodies in this way have a second sight and are also able to see other people's light bodies.
Now, in Tibet, they actually will have a long, thin, sharp piece of wood or something that they stick through somebody's forehead, and they wound the pineal gland a little bit with it. And that supposedly creates some kind of access. Do you think that they might be doing a more technological form of something like that with this sonic gun that they gave you?
They're trying to find a way to stimulate the pineal gland.
How did it feel when you're getting this treatment? What was your experience?
You would have out-of-body experiences.
Really?
Yeah. You would feel your light body grow. You would feel yourself growing in all directions outside of your body. Sometimes you would feel yourself knocked outside of your body, behind yourself.
Wow.
It was, but at the same time, you would feel locally what was going on in your body. The sonic vibration going on into the wet brain matter of yours behind your skull.
Well, I did an episode on wisdom teachings with Dr. Michael Persinger, who has something he calls the God helmet. And they've got these very powerful magnetic guns that he can triangulate and aim into certain parts of the brain. He can create extreme panic and fear. He can make you sweat. He can create sexual arousal. And there are certain parts of the brain that he beams it into where people have a God experience. Now, the skeptics love to bring Persinger in and say that this is proof that there's no greater reality, that these visionary experiences are just a brain firing. But to me, it sounds like what Persinger is doing with the God helmet is similar to what you're saying with sound waves.
Yeah, sounds like it. Electromagnetic waves were also used on us at times.
So do you think that anyone given this kind of a treatment would have an experience like you had, or was it because you were prepared for it with your intuitive training?
I think they would have it. They would have some sort of an experience. I, at a young age, was already having out-of-body experiences and weird experiences. So, we would go on long car trips, and I would get bored, and I would project myself outside of the car, and I would project myself out and fly over the signs and over the hills and look back at the car and fly, and have a out-of-body experience going on long trips. I was already doing that at a very young age. So
my insider Daniel went through this intuitive training for what he called the Psi Corps.
Right.
And it was supposedly derived from the CIA, or so he was told. And I want to kind of go through some of the things that he said they taught him and then see how that compares with your training. So number one was inverse calisthenics. They had him hang upside down by his knees or by his ankles and do sit-ups. And they were told that the more oxygen was in his blood and the more blood flowed through his pineal gland, that if they could strengthen the circulation into the pineal gland in the body in general, that would enhance his abilities. Did you have anything similar to that?
The closest we had to that, they put us into pressure rooms that were highly pressurized and highly oxygenated. And they would have us do meditation, and they would hook up EEG type electrodes to our heads, and they had trained us to go to different states, including theta, and they would say on command, tell you to go to a certain state, and they would measure how quickly you could go there at different atmospheric pressures and oxygen levels inside this chamber.
Do you think this was partly intended to help you be able to function in different extraterrestrial environments?
This was all during the same time when this all had to do with intuitive empath enhancement.
Well, here on Gaiam we have a lot of yoga Tai Chi videos, and people can get into that when they're a subscriber. It's all free. It's included in your basic membership. I always thought that the inverse calisthenics, these sit-ups upside down and increasing the overall circulation, that if you look at the ancients, they're saying yoga, Tai Chi, it's all about building circulation. It's about flexibility, all that kind of stuff. So do you think that these kinds of exercises will be beneficial to people if they want to develop their intuition?
Yes, and they were also teaching us Tai Chi type stuff.
Really?
And it also had to do with a lot of visualization during the same time of visualizing spherical energetic balls and making them travel and feeling them travel down different parts of your body and passing them around inside throughout your body.
Wow.
And yeah, it helps with oxygen and blood flow, but also they were incorporating us using it to move energy throughout our bodies.
Could you explain a little more about what exactly you were supposed to witness? Was there a color to the sphere? Was there a size to it? How many of them were there at once? Was it just one?
Just one.
Okay.
Yeah, and
did they give you any specifics about what it's supposed to look like?
Of our choosing, they just said visualize a sphere, an energetic sphere, and take the sphere in your hand, and then visualize it, passing it back and forth from your hand, and then traveling all the way through your shoulders to the other hand. You would do that at first, and then you would take it, and then it would travel down your spine and back up your spine, up through the top of your skull, and then you would visualize it coming back down to your solar plexus and coming out and catching it in your hands, and then circulating it again. It was a visual exercise, a mental and visual exercise of passing this ball of energy throughout your body and also feeling it.
Could this just be done in a standing position, or were there Tai Chi type of movements that were associated with the movement of the sphere?
There were, you were moving your hands and body and visualizing it as you were doing it. You weren't sitting in a static position as if you were meditating.
Well, there definitely appear to be Tai Chi moves that are associated with a sphere of energy like that. So could the sphere be like this big in certain cases, or is it more small, like about that big?
Yeah, we were visualizing like small spheres.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there was no color, like blue or white or anything like that?
We usually like a light bulb, just white light.
White light.
Yeah.
How similar is what people see as Tai Chi now? Because most people seem to be doing the same set of movements. Would you say those movements were the same as what you were doing, or were they somehow different?
Very many of them are quite the same.
Oh.
Yeah. And most people that are doing Tai Chi know that they're doing energetic work at the same time. People that have practiced it long enough know that they're doing energetic work.
I've never been able to find it online, but there's a PBS video with Bill Moyers where he's got a Tai Chi master, and the guy is standing there, and people come running towards him, and they're yelling and screaming, and they literally just fly off of this guy.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on there? I mean, these people seem to be getting hit with something energetically.
Yeah. Some of these people were demonstrating how they could throw these energy balls and put dents in metal.
Really?
And these people were really developed.
When you say these people now, who are we
The
talking?
people that were teaching us that were really advanced.
Are they space program people, or are they extraterrestrial
This
human
was back.
types?
No, this was back in the MyLab program. These were the just black ops types that were teaching the younger people.
They could dent metal with these spheres that they created?
Yes. Well, with the energy, a sphere did not shoot out.
Right.
But they were visualizing a sphere, and they would shoot it out. And these people were the ones that believed very much in the like Star Wars Jedi kind of the Force. And you wrote a book, The Source Field, and they harnessed what they would call, like, I guess what you would call the dark side of the source field, or the dark side of the Force. And they were very much into really stuff straight out of Star Wars, like Jedi, like the Dark Lord Sith kind of magic energy that they pulled from the ether or the universe.
Well, this gets into another thing that Daniel was telling me. I'm really interested to hear what you're going to say about this. Explosive muscle movements, martial arts, this kind of stuff. Apparently, and some of there's a Tai Chi guy that Pete Peterson knows, and he's really about this kind of very intense tensing of the hands and the fingers like this. What Daniel was told in this training was that these intense, violent muscle movements, something having to do with adrenaline, that adrenaline is like a magic energy conduit, and that you can't get these abilities by just doing smooth, gentle exercise, that push-ups, weightlifting, martial arts, this kind of stuff is essential. Did you ever hear anything like that yourself?
A lot of these guys that were doing this, I didn't see any sign of adrenaline. They seemed totally at ease, at peace, and docile. It just seemed effortless for them, and there was no, kind of a thing going on. It was just a real smooth motion kind of a thing. It was obviously they were acting as some sort of antenna pulling energy from the source field, I guess you would call it.
So in Tai Chi, from what little I know of it, and actually you're making me want to go start these videos right away, interestingly enough, because it's finally making sense to me why you would want to practice this. They seem to always be big on, I've had some martial arts training, so bending your knees, lowering your center of gravity, and they talk about the hara or the tan tien, this sort of area in your abdomen that you're supposed to feel like there's a string or an energetic cord coming up from the earth that's sort of like you're pulling energy out of the earth. Was that part of the training, to ground in that way with your bending your knees?
There was a grounding aspect mentioned of visualizing yourself grounded with the center of the earth, and also visualizing yourself as a antenna that can pull in and push out energy, this background energy of the cosmos.
Daniel, in his training, one of the things they also taught him was that it is the earth that empowers magical work, and that the earth has to authorize you to do these things, that your energy, when you start to be able to develop these feats of consciousness, the earth ultimately, you have to work with the earth and it will authorize the action. Was that something that you encountered in your training?
Well, we were taught a little bit beyond that. It all had to do with the cosmic web. The earth had a relationship with the sun had a relationship with the local star cluster. The local star cluster had a relationship with the center of the galaxy. The galaxy had a relationship with the local galaxy cluster, and so on and so on.
So what are some of the other things that they taught you for the intuitive training?
There were a lot of other types of scenarios that they would put us through, including virtual reality, which often were very disturbing. They would put you by yourself or you and your team in a virtual reality scenario. And this was such an immersed virtual reality scenario that you had smells, tastes, you could feel wind.
Did you know once you were in it that you were in virtual reality?
That was part of the test. You would be put into very horrific situations sometimes, or asked to do very horrific things, put into battle situations with unpleasant type beings that you would have to fight. And you would have to rely more and more on your intuition to win. If you just were relying on martial arts or tactical training, you could never win. But when you would rely on your intuitive abilities, you were able to win. And then at that point, it was almost like a lucid dream. You would realize you were in a virtual world, and then you would pull yourself out.
This sounds exactly like the movie Divergent, where you have this girl who is thrown into a virtual reality, and she's the divergent one. She's the one that learns how to break any virtual reality and get out of it.
Right. Ever since my first two audio interviews hit the internet, I've heard that many times. Yeah.
Also, the movie Ender's Game, where there's the child in a space program, and they're teaching these children to fight extraterrestrials and pilot ships. He realizes early along, he's getting thrown into virtual reality simulations, that they want him to be as sociopathic as possible. And so instead of cooperating with these beings that are trying to give him a challenge, he'll like rip its eye out or something. Is this the kind of stuff that those movies seem to be related to what you're experiencing?
Yes, they were not only training us, but they were psychologically profiling us as well to see what type of orders we would follow, how far we would go. They wanted to know who were sociopaths, who would follow certain types of orders. There were orders,
really horrible stuff.
Really horrible stuff that I don't want to talk about on camera, that you would see your somewhat friends, but team members taking part in, and you were ordered to take part in, and you would have to make the moral choice or dilemma whether to fall to peer pressure, do what the others were doing, or to not do it.
What were some of the monstrosities that they had you fight, if you can tell us some of that? I don't want you to dredge up a whole lot of nasty memories, but...
They had a very good insight into what you did not like.
Oh, so it was like they deliberately target what you hated the most.
They would target your fears. Obviously, I did not like spiders, apparently. So I did battle with very large spiders, did battle with reptilian type beings.
And there's no way to tell that it's not real when you're in it.
Right. It's hard. It gets to a point where it's hard to tell what's real and what's not. And once you finally get to a point in your intuitive empath training to where you consistently are able to tell that you're put in a virtual reality setting, then you have somewhat graduated to a new level.
You'd mentioned to me in another conversation, sometimes it was like professional wrestler types, like big, strong men that you'd have to fight.
Mm-hmm.
And
you're a kid.
And this is like but it's sort of like a bad dream, right? Mm-hmm. You don't remember getting into it, but once you're in it, it just seems like this is your reality.
You would be in a scenario to where you are being put into the scenario that seemed logical, and then you're in the scenario and you've got to fight your way out of the scenario or figure your way out of the scenario. And the only way to do so successfully was in an intuitive way. And
could you get a little more specific as to how that would actually play out? Because otherwise we're just going to have to fill in what we think and not really know what you mean.
Well, if you were fighting a person like if you were fighting another person, you would then, instead of relying on the martial arts or the tactical training, you would then lock in on the person's eyes and make a connection with them, and then intuitively know what they're going to do before they would do it. And that was one step. And when you were able to start doing that, and then situations would happen, you would intuitively know when you were going to clear a building. You would intuitively know, if there were 12 rooms to clear, you begin to intuitively know the first 5 rooms were already clear, and the 6th room was the room where you had to engage. And then once you started reaching this point, it started to become easier for you to intuit that you were in virtual reality. And from the very beginning, when you were put in a landing zone or put into the situation, you would immediately know that it was a virtual reality, and you would pull yourself out.
This is interesting because who is doing the actions in the virtual reality? In other words, if you're psychically detecting how to fight somebody, who is the somebody? Is there a person controlling who you're fighting? Is it a computer program? How does this actually work?
They're pulling information out of our heads and control them. They also had the ability to put multiple people in the same virtual reality scenario, to where at times these people were really there together. When you were engaging with their mind, you were engaging with their mind and their chair.
When you're fighting something like a tarantula, can there be a human operator controlling the actions of the tarantula, or is it a computer program like an artificial intelligence?
This was just a situation that was playing out in the virtual reality. I don't know if it was artificial intelligence. It was very high tech, and I know that they were mirroring a lot of information out of your psyche into the virtual reality.
If a technology like this could be done at all, undoubtedly some people are going to start thinking about stuff like the Matrix and wonder how much of all of our reality is a simulation or is somehow a virtual, greater compartmentalized part of...
Row your boat, life is but a dream.
Do you think that ultimately, if we're looking at the fact that we only remember one lifetime and that it seems that we have an afterlife and reincarnation, that our life here is sort of like a simulation every time we wake up from sleep, that we're jumping back into this hologram?
That's probably a good way to put it. But we're definitely, from what I was told by the Blue Avians, since we're spiritual children still when we die, we're not living long enough to spiritually develop. It's taking us multiple lifetimes to learn the lessons and to spiritually develop to a point to where we can graduate to become higher density beings.
Well, you've heard it here. This is Cosmic Disclosure, very mind-blowing information, and there's much, much more where this came from. We have 52 episodes, and we may even be doing more past that point, so every week you're going to be hearing fascinating stuff like this. So please stay tuned. I'm your host, David Wilcock, and we thank you for watching.